Hello and welcome back. This is the video number 4 for the Flow Certified Coach training series. Today we're looking at tile number 2, the 4 whys, and I'm really excited to have Andrew Henwood with us today, and I'm going to have him introduce himself on the next slide.
Thank you, Andrew. I am Andrew Henwood, also known as the other Andrew. I don't know if that'll appear on the video or not, but I am, in fact, an FCTI. I think I might have a few more certification coming through in the alphabet soup of identification, but I am a methods incubation coach. I work with Glenn Ligori and Brandon Schrum. They've been appearing in some other videos at ZF or ZF as incubators of methodology, as mindset instigators and methodology champions. So we get out there and we mess with people and bring about change in all kinds of places.
Cool.
So what we're going to be talking about now is the 4 whys. For me, stepping into the language of argument. I'm going to use that word argument, not to try and say who's right and who's wrong, but when we have to take that position of trying to get someone else to believe something, or to think in a new way, or challenge their assumptions. It's a moment that requires a bit of persuasion. It's the ability to have someone make a change. I know, Andrew, you said it at one point, I think I wrote it down, it's real easy to get people to act in different ways. It's hard to get them to change their beliefs. So you have to have that ability to connect to what moves them. When it comes to trying to move the needle with leadership, most of the time, it's going to boil down to one of these 4 whys. When they say, why should we do this? Why should we change that? Why should we bring these people in? It's these, most likely, these 4 things. The first, increasing revenue. The second, decreasing cost. The third, mitigating risk. And the fourth, which is kind of the newer, more altruistic add-on that's become very commonplace in a lot of corporations, is just because it's the right thing to do. So knowing that these are the 4 levers that we can pull, conversations for change are going to revolve around being able to know which one to pull, how hard to pull it, and how to connect it back to what they're really interested in. So the graphic that we use to represent this particular concept, Andrew's going to show it to us now, is again inside that 4 square. We know that organizationally, individually, team, and product, it's going to have a lot to do with each one of those, but mostly it's going to be focusing on product. We're going to be looking to those programs and those areas where it's, why should we trigger this? In a world with finite resources and finite time and infinite pressure, we have to be able to connect back to one of these points to say we simply need to do this because it's going to create that market share opportunity that didn't exist before. And if we don't do it, we miss out on revenue. Or it could simply be, we have too much redundancy inside of our decision-making processes that are taking place. We need to get rid of some of these things and drive those costs down. Risk mitigation is always going to be a popular topic because it's going to be so squishy. It's a very difficult thing to try and capture with precise measurement tools. Any of the tools that are out there that are really good, we can capture it, but mostly it's going to be indirect at best. And then finally, like we said, it's to do the right thing. Should we put this new product into the market because it's just the right thing to do? Should we have this program that overemphasizes perhaps environmental outreach as a staging ground for a decision that we might want to make? Either which case, most leaders are going to have one or more of these that are going to be a little bit stronger for them to work by, or they've been given an edict. Recently, some of the work I've been doing in my company has had one of these levers is a very powerful point in the difficult economic circumstances of 2020. And when we say, okay, there's not a lot of market movement taking place to increase revenue, maybe we do have to look to cut some costs. How do we do that? If we don't have that shining North Star vision in place, and we don't have the ability to say, where can we make cuts without sacrificing the journey that we're on, without trying to compromise our strategic intents, and again, create new obstacles that might prevent us from achieving that vision, we have to use that as our standard to say, well, there are things we must do, even when it's difficult. So having those conversations with leaders, we need to know what they need to hear, and we need to be able to speak their language. So again, as a recap, when we say 4 whys, we know that we're going to be connecting back inextricably to what a leader needs to hear. When they're going to pull the trigger on a decision, a change or new program or new product, they're going to have at least one of these, most likely, get pulled. Are we bringing more money in? Are we reducing money that we're having to spend? Are we trying to take the edge off some of the risks that are going to be inherent to whatever work it is that we're doing? Or can we try and say we're doing this simply because it's the right thing to do? So you get what you get when we try to apply this in. And when we try and measure it, there's no profit. It's not going to be sustainable. Again, we're in the business of business. If we're a nonprofit, well, we don't have to worry about that. But if we're not in a nonprofit, we know that we have to have that. I know in a previous video, Robert talked about the cost of an individual cannot be higher than the value they produce. So we know that we have to be able to tap into those when we need to. Second, cutting costs shouldn't be a means in and of itself. We can't just say 10% off the top. Okay, well, 10% off the top is going to create probably that magnified by another percentage of issues that you're going to have to mitigate. So we don't want to say, let's just do it for the sake of doing it. We've got to have that effective plan to move forward in doing it. Not every risk can be mitigated. We can't make decisions all the time to make a 0.00000% risk environment. We can't do it. The world is inherently risky as a place. So all we can do is try and do our best to make the right decisions at the right time, accepting the risks that we can know and putting ourselves in a position to respond to those that we end up discovering. And finally, sometimes doing the right thing can hurt. If you're doing it just for doing it, like we said, we're running in the business of profitability when we exist in the business of profitability. So we can't always do the right thing at the expense of being able to operate that actual business.
Yeah. Really good. In your work, have you run into any situations where you've had conversations around this, or any examples that you might be able to share in this
Yeah,
area?
I could think of, because one of the things I like to write down about this is that the results of leadership are looking for is a mindset component. So sometimes when we try and say that we need to stop thinking so much about one area or another area, that's where we have to, again, kind of get into their head a little bit. I
Okay.
recently had a conversation with a senior leader within my company, and we're talking about the right thing to do. And in this instance, it was the nature of communication and tools that we should be using and meeting cadences. And there's just this rigid monster of formalities that were going on. And I knew in that moment that she needed to receive a little bit of that coaching on, this could be the right thing to do because it's pushing you out of your comfort zone. But all the people you're communicating with, it's significantly more in line with their comfort zone. And to try and sit back and appreciate that as a moment of difficulty. And again, this was a significant product related issue that was taking place. She knew that she had to accept some of those differences. And in that instance, the right thing was meeting her people where they were at. And she had to make that decision change.
That's really good. Really good. Super. Well, thank you for sharing on this
Absolutely.
particular topic. Really appreciate it and look forward to having you in the next video. Thanks, Andrew.
Fantastic. Yep. See you, other Andrew.